Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
Hey guys, this is your first time listening to the One with Dice podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about tabletop RPGs. Calvin and I like to talk about the games that we run and the games that we play in, and we take a casual approach to the hobby. So, we just want to share our perspectives on being a fan of these novel experiences.
Indeed. Like Ramon said, we take a casual approach to the hobby, so hopefully hopping to the other side of the GM screen feels a little less obscure if that's something you're interested in, or just playing for the first time. It's really fun and cool, and you don't have to overthink it too much. If you're into that sort of thing, please, subscribe to the channel and all that fun YouTube stuff. We'll go into a bit more details about all sorts of other things we have going on the channel here. But, if you are into tabletop RPG games, especially Pathfinder, Lancer, Starfinder, Mutants and Masterminds, those sorts of things, please stick around and check out the channel. So for today, we've got a few topics we wanted to cover. Just a bit of a grab bag episode that we will get into. But before we get into all of that, we have to get to the most important part of the show, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week.
Yeah, the One with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week, brought to you by me, Ramon. Hello.
Hi.
Hey. Well, I hope you had a good week, Calvin. I hope everybody's listening has a good week. So this is one of those bathroom ideas, you know what I mean? Like you're in the shower and you're like, wait a minute. This is a brilliant idea. Definitely took some time for me to solidify this, but the idea of looking at, your game sessions, your tabletop RPGs, less like a, game and more like a story, I guess, kind of pulling from that kind of space of like the narrative to really like kind of challenge your players, specifically challenging your players within the narrative. So like, a way that normal, I guess, regular stories challenge their protagonists, which your players are the protagonists of the story, is challenging their truths of the world, right? Like whether they believe that they're the strongest or the smartest, or like maybe they can't trust people, that kind of stuff, or someone will always betray you in the end. Those things are like, truths the characters believe in the world, and then the story challenges those beliefs, right? Even the antagonist challenges those beliefs, right? For instance, most superhero characters believe like that killing is wrong, or like generally hurting people is wrong, but then the bad guy would just be like, no, killing is the right move. And then you could set up a situation where like your good guy player will have to make a tough choice between like stopping the bad guy and bloodying their hands, or letting them rampage on. That that kind of like no-win scenario. I think there's like a good one would be like, I think it's Spider-Man. Oh man, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm reaching far back for this one, but the Green Goblin set up like a scenario with like Mary Jane and the it's like the trolley problem with the Mary Jane. It's like, and then like the bus full of kids or something. It's like, choose Spider-Man, and make that choice, right? But there's other ways for you to like challenge your players, and I kind of did this too with the campaign, the Pathfinders of Inion. And their tasks as players were to give me like a reason for them to like basically immigrate to a new world, leaving, and like what their past, what in their past they're leaving behind, right? And try to live their life as best moving forward, because nobody in Neon's gonna care about your past. They only care about what you're trying to do for them now, right? And obviously the thing is that their past will catch up to them, so it's kind of like how their character changed. Obviously this was like a couple of sessions in, and they're like higher level now, they've gone through a bunch of stuff. So how that character changes since landing and having all that baggage to being that like the new person now. Is like, did they change? Did they learn anything? And it'd be a cool way to do like a character arc for some of those flat characters or players who like don't go through that kind of like change, and to make it more interesting.
Yeah. Like when you had mentioned the idea to me before, what I thought it would be really great for is for if someone comes with a character that doesn't necessarily have like a specific goal they're trying to achieve or a specific thing they're trying to do over the course of the game, which is fine. Like for someone who makes like a character like that, there's nothing like particularly wrong with that. It's nice to have a character that's just like, I want to do the story that the GM is doing, and just like being able to bounce off of that. Like, but what you could also do though with that is that if they come to you with, well, my character has these beliefs and these ideals, then you can weave ways to sort of challenge those things, or put like an antagonist related to those things into the story that you might have in mind, or the setting you have in mind, or the NPCs you have in mind, that can sort of challenge that character in a way, and then give them a character arc that isn't specifically like, I'm trying to get to a thing, but it comes out the other end with their character having changed in some way.
Yeah, or even you could even just use it to validate their ideas or their truths too, right?
Right.
Like, because like not all the time a character is gonna be like, not all the time you need a character to be like wrong, right? Or like it just needs to be like challenged. So even if the character's truth remains intact, it's like, you know, they still had to prove that it was true, right? It turns from like an idea that they only had to something that's kind of proven now, right? So.
Right.
Which still is like they went on a whole journey and they came out kind of different, but now they have like the validation of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a like, if you are playing the kind of game where you want to have a character arc, I think that's a great way to sort of engineer it.
Yeah, and I think it's cool too because you can base your bad guys off of it, or even some of your NPC interactions, right? So you as a GM ask you players for like, give like one or two truths of the world that your character believes in, right? And then you can build those characters to be like, okay, this character like is gonna reinforce that, or this character is gonna try and deny that, right, or challenge that. So then, you know, the story, it helps flesh out those NPCs, and it kind of like makes everything a little bit stickier in the story. So like, you know, players don't feel like they're just kind of drifting from battle to battle, right?
Yeah.
Or like one encounter to another encounter or whatever, right? And they're not really having like you know, they're not binded to the story so well, right? Because, you know, it just happens, right? Sometimes whatever the story you're trying to tell, it's not one of the players is, you know, vibe, right? Sometimes it just kind of backfires that way. That's okay. I mean, they're here to hang out with you because they're your friends, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. I do like the concept of role. I think you can get a lot of good use out of that.
Yeah, and it's like really easy too. I mean, not easy, but like it's really simple. It's a very simple concept. Just have like another question you can ask your players, including like, well, if it was Pathfinder, be like, what class you're playing, right? What's your background? Tell me a bit about you. Add into their backstory, especially characters who like don't want to have like, or players you don't want to make like a very deep backstory. If you have a truth of the world, that says a lot enough of your character, more than like a 10-page backstory. Well, like you just make up the NPC names afterwards anyway, right? So, you know.
Yeah. You just randomly generate them on the day.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, so there you go, folks. There's your tip of the week. A little bit of a rambly one, but definitely I think it's some good sauce in that pot. So
yeah, I think in summary, it's just, you know, ask your player characters for something their characters believe, and then that'll give you some ways to challenge it, and possibly create an arc for them that isn't just explicitly getting to a goal. But let's get into some episode stuff. Also, something we might be getting into the habit of doing is just like some TTRPG news. We'll see how that goes. I did want to mention that there is a Pathfinder hack and slash action RPG coming out soon. Paizo is working with a studio called BCOM Studios, BKOM. And they will be launching a Kickstarter later this month for this RPG featuring some of the iconic Pathfinder characters. So if you're familiar with like Amiri and Ezrin and all those characters, you'll be seeing some of them. As far as I can tell, it's not like a turn-based game, but it does use Pathfinder characters and I think some of the setting stuff as well. It's called Pathfinder Abomination Vaults. I'll have a link to the trailer below if you want to check that out, and then when the Kickstarter is launched, we might talk about that a bit more. And possibly play it on the channel when it comes out. We'll see. Still gonna play that Lancer game.
Yeah. Definitely.
Or at least the demo of it, because it's still like the Kickstarter just finished like not too long ago.
Yeah, definitely put it on the list of things that you need to look at on the channel.
Yeah. I've been wanting to play Sentinels of Earth Prime for a while, but I just gotta find a day to do it. Because they released a digital version of the it's basically Sentinels of the Multiverse with Mutants and Masterminds characters, and the digital version came out like less than a month ago. So I've been doing that off screen.
Oh, secret. Playing games without the crew? Wow.
It is very weird now to play video games without streaming them.
Who do I talk to? Is it just myself?
You joke, but... Alright, so let's get into the episode proper. So one topic that I thought was interesting, that I just saw just floating around the TTRPG sphere, is the idea of how much talking can be done during a round or a turn of combat. The idea being that, like, sometimes turns will take very long because people will stop to talk about each decision, and they'll talk to, like, everybody else around about each decision, and someone will come in and say, hey, here's what you should be doing on your turn, instead of letting the other person make a decision. And you know, like that can definitely slow combat down, and even just like not knowing what you want to do. And I've been pretty guilty of that in certain times myself. Like I will think of a thing and then it'll just fall out of my head the moment it's my actual turn. So something I was wondering is, I don't know if you have like any like specific hard rules when it comes to talking during combat. I think you did you used to have a whatchamacallit, sand timer dealy?
Yeah, I did pull that out at one point. I just had, we have this like, I don't even know how long it is, but I think the fact of just putting something on the table, like, just starts freaking people out to make a decision.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, I think we just got it from IKEA or whatever, but it's just like a little sand timer. So yeah, you can put timers down if you feel like your players are taking too long in combat to make a decision. Because sometimes it's just like, you know, you guys are fighting a bunch of goblins and it's like, oh shit, what do I do? It's like you hit the goblin whichever way you want to hit him, right?
Like they're overthinking it.
Yeah. So it depends on the situation, I think. I don't think there's really hard or fast rules, but as far as somebody else telling, or like, I guess like forcing another player to be like, you just do this or whatever, right? So they can move on. That's like, I don't think that's like, if someone's being aggressive about it, that's a problem. But if someone's just offering a suggestion, because, you know, I'm actually that kind of person. I'm the tactician every time we play a game. It's like, I think about everyone else's turns while the game is going. I'm pretty engaged most times with combat in those combat scenarios. Like, just because, you know, I am that kind of nerd. So, yeah, so I mean, if there's like a designated tactician person in your group who's like giving us suggestions, I mean, like, obviously, like as a GM, you can try and limit them so like other players can have like their own creative ideas. But sometimes you have to lean on that character because, like, you know, you may have like put a challenge out too hard, and like it may make, like, if they do make a mistake, it could spell doom for the party, right? So sometimes it's like you can rely on the tactician to be like, to get you out of your own mess. And your players won't feel like, you know, they were cheated out of like a lived experience, right? It's like they figured it out on the skin of their own teeth, versus like you just being like, oh, I failed my crit roll, except you crit them like 3 times or something, but you're rolling behind the screen.
I feel the same way about the tactician kind of player as I do about the rules lawyer kind of player. In that it's not the thing the person does, it's more how they do it that could be the problem. Yeah. Because like if you're offering an idea to someone who doesn't know what they want to do, if you're offering an idea to someone and they don't know what they want to do at a certain moment in combat, I think that's different from just like before they even say anything on their turn telling them what to do. Because I've probably done that. I've definitely received advice on that sort of thing when it's like, I'm not sure what to do here, and then someone will remind me, oh, you can do this certain action or do this certain thing. It'll sometimes be something I forgot, or something that I didn't know was, maybe it could have been something that I didn't know was in the game at all, and then it's like, oh, okay, I didn't know I could do that, and that would be very useful right now.
Yeah, because it's some of these rules are very complicated, right? Like these books are pretty thick ass tomes, right? Just
Yeah.
so if you as a GM shouldn't be responsible for memorizing all the rules. You're responsible of running the game, right? You can have the rules burden on other people, and if someone has the capacity for it, then shit, thank God they're here. Like,
Yeah.
let them do it, man. Right? Don't worry about it. It's you should like again like there isn't like the GM versus the players. It's everybody working together to have fun and
Yes.
to yeah, have a lived experience.
Like that's why,
Yeah.
like when I had you on when we were streaming Lancer on the USP channel, like I was really glad to have you there because I just needed someone that I could ask, like, hey, does this sound correct to you, or does this sound right, or like, what's the rule for this situation? Because, especially in a stream game,
Mhm.
like I could definitely talk a lot about how nervous I've been during some large combats on a stream game. Because like I don't want to stop and look up the like if I'm playing with friends and whatever, I'll stop and look up the rules sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
but most of the time, what I want to do is just keep things going. But on a stream game, especially, sort of leaning back to the original topic, on a stream game, especially, like I want to just keep things moving. And it is very hard to do from a GM perspective if you don't know how to do something, or if you forget a rule for something, or you don't remember the specifics
Yeah.
of something. Like just making a quick ruling on it and moving on is
Yeah.
my normal preference. But obviously, you want to keep the game accurate too.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a little bit of automation now with the the online services for games that kind of take the like you don't have to know how like everything works if you like in Lancer for instance in Foundry if you just like select the attack button and like make sure that you're you select the target and you press the attack button, it'll just work. You just know
Yeah,
it'll just work, and it'll
yeah,
tell you if it succeeds or not. You don't have to look up anything. It'll just be like you hit or you miss, dog. Like, you know. So, right? It's kind of good in that way, but yeah. As far as like the length of like combat, it depends on like the scenario. If you're fighting a boss and it's very very dangerous, I think that you're allowed to give your players a little bit of time to think about it. I mean, hopefully the idea is that players go into a rhythm, right? When combat happens, it's like everybody knows their positions, right? It's like unlike a sports team, everybody knows their positions. They've been practicing because you've been working your way up, to get to that big final encounter. So when you know people always just kind of default to what they're best at, right? Because they've been just doing it for a while. So all the frontline fighters go up, all the backline people go back, or whatever, right? So as long as like they've been like kind of paying attention, I think it's just kind of like muscle memory, right?
yeah. And I mean that's just gonna come with like time and experience. Because like, and again, just talking about some stream stuff. Like if you see some of the earlier stuff with me on the Untold Stories Project channel, especially there was one pretty big combat where death was on the line, which is very rare for a superhero story. And I had to play like a couple of characters, and I was very nervous. So I think that came across pretty obviously because I was talking through every single decision I was making, and just probably overthinking it. But I feel like more recently, like I've been doing that less because I have a better sense of like what my character can do that's useful. Like, okay, I know this character can like set up someone to be taken down by somebody else, so I'll do this thing, and then someone else can land the big blow. Or like, okay, this character, I am the whirlwind, so I'm just gonna like run through this group of enemies swinging my hands, and if they get hit, that's fine.
Yeah, they're gonna catch these hands.
Exactly.
Um, but I think that you can also take, like, say if there's one specific player who always takes a long time with their turns, like maybe they're operating a complicated character, or like they're new to the game, or like maybe they're just new to this character class or abilities or whatever, right? And they don't really know how it works. And you could just do a danger room scenario with them, like just hang out with them, take an hour or two or whatever, just put something in a schedule, meet up online or whatever, and just like run through a couple of like encounters with just them, right? Or them and an NPC, and just tell them to just be like, oh yeah, this is training mode. here's some goblins. Just do stuff on your kit and see what it does, right? And then we'll just walk through it, right? Because again, it's kind of just like building that muscle memory of just like, oh yeah, this is what it does. So you don't have to like remember, like look it up every single time.
Yeah. One thing I found helpful was sort of writing down like, here's what this thing does, here's what that does, here's the result of it, and in some cases what I need to roll for it. And then I would just like flip back to that and refer to that, and it really helped for like even in combat as strategizing, like what does the team need right now, and can I do that? And then if there's a way to, or if it's just like, let me make sure I don't die right now. Like I found that useful, so that might be something that as the GM you might want to help the player figure out, like just what is the common tactic of the type of character that you're playing. What's the most effective thing you can do? Like, are you more useful in supporting people? Are you more useful in doing damage, or however else your game is played? Like, what is the thing that your character is good at, and how do you do that consistently?
Yeah, I don't think there is this as much in Pathfinder 2E now. I think the 3 action mechanic kind of helped out quite a bit, and like the whole like agile or like the grading attack value system kind of helped out too. Like I mean, it's complicated. Multi-attack penalty. Yeah, it is a little complicated, but I remember back in Pathfinder 1, I was playing like a dual wield. Like it's just like a lot of stuff you can add. You can like slap on to like a simple attack roll, right? There's all these modifiers that go up and down that shove like your final number like all over the place. And I found that like writing out like just like a flow chart a little bit, like you said, just like a little flow chart to be like, what's active right now and what does that mean for my attack roll, right? I used to do it like in the borders of my page, just like little tiny notes of like how shit should work. I mean, I had to always like redo my physical character sheet because like it would just get inevitably just full of shit that I've written down to keep track of, right? But yeah, I mean that's something you do. Like there's like a notes section on character sheets most days, even the online ones, so you could put that in there. I mean, hell, I think at one point I made an Excel file because you were playing like a Lancer character that was a sniper. You had a lot of bonuses to figure out.
I remember that. Oh, I missed that character.
made a little Excel sheet. Yeah.
Even though I basically made that character for a one shot, but yes.
Yeah, I know. Damn it, Shaka, that was fun.
I did take that character idea and like put that into my list of pre-gen Lancer characters. So she's still technically around. But yeah, like it was sort of complicated because I did a bunch of different things I could layer on, so I could go fishing for crits. But yeah, like just having that list of stuff is very helpful. I think if you're in the situation where people are talking a lot because you're like they're not sure what to do, I think being able to have that list of possible actions, or at least a list of what does my stuff do, I think is going to be helpful. And probably like limiting your options as far as like if it's a type of game where you're going to have like a lot of options for different things, maybe limiting those options somehow, like limiting the number of spells you have to remember.
Yeah, I mean definitely for my character, half my spells are magic missiles, so I don't really have a choice. Like it's like do I do something else or is it magic missile time? Like, and there's something else. There isn't a lot of it, so I sacrifice my utility for just straightforwardness. But
I miss the simplicity of just apply bonk to enemy when I'm playing a caster.
The bonk game is strong in Pathfinder 2e. I think if everybody was bonk characters, we would probably still just roll through. Like, what? All this buff men just walking through, just being like dead. Like, but another thing you could do is also, as a GM, you could have like a quick reference guide. That's always something cool. Like, if you're playing in person, then hand it out. It could be a 1-pager or a 2-pager, like back and front or something like that. And then it's like, this is just all the actions you could possibly take. That's just generic, right? Yeah. Or like maybe even just like how to do stuff, or like what does like statuses mean, right? All that shit, it's hard to remember. And if there's like a reference thing you could do, sure. Or like you could even have it like as a PDF in for those online games, so that people could just reference.
Yeah.
in the actual program or through like Discord or something. Another thing you can do is like create like little cards. I did that for my Pathfinder pirate game.
Yeah.
Where everyone had their like basically everyone got like their own special unique item or like weapon or whatever, and like I made them into cards that just kind of listed out like kind of what they do. They don't have stats, but it's just kind of like this is like a poison dagger or whatever, or a +1 poison dagger, or like one of our characters has an axe that's possessed by a demon. So here's a bunch of cool homebrew. This is a cool demon axe maneuver ability, right? Just listed on there. Just like stuff that like the players can like physically look at, being like, if anything, applying this weapon is something I can do, right?
Yeah.
Or even like I think Pathfinder. I'm not sure if 2E has these. They have like cards that you can get for like spells too. They have a deck of spells that you can just like have in front of you. Just like other things that you could just like, sometimes you just have to like physically touch something if you're playing IRL to be like, oh yeah, I can do that, because like you can always just like mouse over stuff when you're playing online. But if you have to like flip through physical pages for stuff, sometimes it's like a little hard. And that also can cut down on time if everybody just has their own reference for stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta assume they have spell cards by now, but yeah, it depends on what works for your group and what's easier for them to reference to. And being able to give out something physically, especially for items, is a big bonus in my book.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be something that's like printed, right? Like I did, like found like pictures and like I printed it and pull it, and there's like a little text box and stuff. But hell, if you give somebody like a cue card with just some information on it, they can just like clip that on or staple it onto their character sheet bundle. That's good, man. That's good to go, right?
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things to do when like years ago when I was like running in person, is like writing stuff on a cue card for an item and then just handing it to the player, and then they can decide how much they want to reveal about it.
Yeah, right. It's like super cool. I do. There's a lot of advantages of playing in like online, but like in person, I think it's kind of fun. It's like I think I'm old school like that. I'm like that's where I think the sauce is, when you look somebody dead in the eye, right?
Yeah,
like,
while you kill their character.
Yeah, you're like, I'm so sorry. Rolls the dice.
Yeah, no, that is yeah. They're I think playing online has like a lot of benefits in terms of functionality, but I just really like playing in person. I wish I was going to I gotta go to more conventions and stuff so I can play with more people, like all the people I play online with.
Yeah, so there you go, folks. We gave you like a list of like I don't know, like 10 things to do if people are if you find that your game is lagging in between those turns, like your combat's lagging because everyone doesn't know what they're doing, or maybe there's like a one problem player, like it's physical paraphernalia, taking some time with that player to figure out what their strategy is, or just slapping on the timer and being like, well, if you don't go, you're just gonna forfeit your turn. Right? That kind of deal.
And I mean, I have seen people who say like, I don't like the idea of a timer because of how much pressure it puts on, but I mean, for one, I think you're overthinking it because it's just a game. It's fine. It's largely fine. But again, in that case, like if you just have like a quick reference you can go to, that might make things easier. One idea I did see that I kind of liked was just to limit how long turns individually take, is letting people have more time to communicate like at the top of the round. If they want to,
like having a little strategy session before, right? Yeah. So, like when it's not someone's specific turn, just be like, all right, top of the round, you guys get 2 minutes to figure it out if you need it.
Yeah, like especially like you had mentioned before, like during a boss combat, like something that's not just a bunch of generic little dudes for you to flex on, like something that's actually very dramatic and very important. Having a bit more time to talk at the top of the round versus during every individual turn, and maybe limiting that a bit so that turns aren't taking like 10 minutes per turn, and then you only get like one combat in, or you don't even finish the combat you're actually trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, everything adds up, right? Every couple of seconds, or if it takes 30 seconds for everybody extra, then it's gonna add up. You can just put it all in one place. So, at least like if it's a group conversation, like everyone can just be engaged and just put their 2 cents in. That also could be a place where, the tactician gets to put their advice in, right? It's
Yep.
like at the top of the round being like, okay, what's the game plan for next turn, right? What's happening? Because obviously, like, you're there, so like you can hear it, so you can plan accordingly as well as a GM. But obviously, if they have a good plan, like sometimes it's just you like again, the point of the GM isn't to defeat the players. The point of the GM is to make them earn it. So if they earned it with a good plan, then you're done. You did it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if they talk out a good idea, like you don't have to, you as the GM, you don't have to figure out like, okay, how do I ruin their plan? It's just like, what are the bad guys going to do in response to what they see as it happens? And how are the players going to earn their way or fight their way through whatever comes up next?
Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully, that's a good takeaway. So yeah, if any of these are good, let us know in the comments because, or if you guys have any ideas that you like to use, maybe they can even get if you take your turn within a minute, here, take this cool bonus or whatever, right? Like that might be something to reward fast play, right?
Yeah, like I know, like I still get stressed on my turn sometimes, so I might need an incentive. But yeah, if you have ideas on how to deal with like combat's taking too long because of too much crosstalk, drop those in the comments below. Another thing that I thought would be interesting to talk about is sort of introducing new people or new players into a campaign or perhaps into gaming for the tabletop RPG gaming specifically for the first time. It just sort of came up to me as I was trying to think of like what can we talk about on the podcast. And I think something that sort of came to me was just like, if there's new people coming in, what are they going to be dealing with first? And how can someone who is running the game or is even just involved in the game, how can they help like onboard people?
Yeah, I mean, you can do a lot of stuff, right? Like, I would say the first thing is like have pre-gen characters is like a pretty big step, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it just takes off if you put the work in beforehand for like a new player, then they're more likely to be like, yes, I would like to sit at this table for 4 hours and roll this plastic weird shapes, right? Like, I mean, I think tabletop RPGs are a little bit more a part of pop culture now. Like a lot of people know about them. I know of them and kind of have an idea of like how it works, but for somebody who's never played, the actual process of making a character is like the work you have to do to actually enjoy the game, right? It's homework. So if you could do the homework for them, then they're like, yeah, I'll show up. And you can keep that pre-gen character for the next person, right? The next new guy to be like, hey, this is Bob. He has a sword. He's pretty cool.
Yes, I've seen him do many great things.
Yeah, right? Like, do you like Aragorn? Because this is Aragorn. And you're like, oh, cool. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna befriend an elf and a dwarf, and it's like jokes. They're already here. Let's go become a king. Like that's essentially what Aragorn said.
Yeah.
Aragorn is like, listen, man, I am tired of just being by myself. I want to have a kingdom and a cool elf wife. That's what I want.
Living the dream.
Living the dream.
Yeah, I think because I mean this even ties back to what we were talking about before. And just like giving people ideas of how to do certain things or what things they can do during combat, because like I've made pre-gen characters before, probably more than I actually needed, but for the Lancer game, like I had made characters, like they had their name, their call sign, their bios and whatever, but the most important part was like notes on how does this person's mech work and what does it do, and here like what are some things you might do during combat, and what is like the main weapon you might be using and how might you be using it.
Yeah, right. Like that's actually again going back to like the taking long in combat, right? Taking your like how long turns are, like you already did the homework for them. They just have to kind of just read it, just have to like at the moment be like, oh, okay, I see how this works, and just do it. Right? Just roll the dice, because it's so funny too, because like all the hemming and hawing, it's all over whether or not to roll the dice. Like
Yeah.
Most you still don't even know if you hit or miss or whatever it's gonna work. So it's very funny too. Like, there's like a big buildup of like 5 minutes of like, oh god, I don't know what to do, and then it's like just roll the dice on something and see if it works, right? Don't worry about it because the outcome is between like 1 and 20, right? It's wild. It's wildly different. You don't know what's gonna happen. So
yeah,
just
that is the thing with D20 games, is that you every single face on the die has an equal number of showing up, and it can be hard to predict what you should do sometimes, because if you're weighing the odds of something and you're like, I don't know, there's only 4 numbers on that die that'll help me right now, and everything else is terrible. Then it's like, oh, I don't know what to do.
You just roll the dice because you're a hero. Don't forget, folks. You're playing heroes, and it comes. You gotta believe in yourself, right, to be a hero. So
says the man who's on his 8th Duke now.
There's always a Duke. All right. Listen, Duke's whole pathos, his truth, I would say, from tying back to the tip, like Duke's truth is that if he is a clone, right, and there could be a variable infinite amounts of clones, how is he gonna stand out? Like, what does it actually mean to be a person, right? It's really how people remember you. And if Duke can do something memorable, then he stands out from all the other Dukes.
I mean,
so
fair, but
that's
still.
why Duke's. Yeah, well, that's why Duke's just, and like, I don't know. I guess Duke also values like triumph in death a lot more than everything else, because he could also just be a scientist or something, or like be a good poet, and then you're like, I'm Duke number 89, I am the best poet in the sector or whatever, and it's like, nah, man, that's not cool.
Just go home and be a family man, but no, he's he's gotta strap himself into a giant robot and fly real fast and get blown up.
Yeah, exactly, right? That's the only way to be remembered. Never said it was a good truth, but that's the truth Duke lives, man.
Fair. But I guess what I wanted to talk about is there any, like, what else do you do when you're getting someone like new to a game, and maybe they haven't played a lot of tabletop RPGs before? Like, what would you do? I mean, well, you have been in that situation, because you have like had a bunch of people who were new. I mean, like, I was new when I first played with everybody in that group.
Yeah. I am the seniorest person in all of our groups, I think.
Really? Not Steven?
Yeah, Steven, but I mean, we hardly play with Steven nowadays, but yeah, okay, after Steven, it's me.
Oh man, we talked to Steven like years ago on the podcast. That was like a single-digit episode, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, Steven, Steven, my good friend Steven, was the person who introduced me to tabletop RPGs. He is my man who got me into this stuff, and I guess is the reason why we're talking right now. Yeah. Shout out to the Guelph University and their tabletop RPG club. I think it's still running, or it was running back then. And he just came home one time and he was like, "Guys, this thing kicks ass." And we're like, oh, okay.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, basically, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's all about like helping the new player envision their character and like getting it on, doing all the math for them and stuff, so they can just get to playing the character, right? I think with like Abby, my wife, it was just like I just kind of sat down with her like an afternoon and be like, okay, what do you want? Right? And obviously she was like, I don't know, because wives, right? So I was like, okay,
sure.
I just kind of went through the list of stuff and being like, this is what this character class does, give a little background, and then eventually we figured out kind of like how the vibe of her character, and then I just kind of put everything together. I gave her some suggestions, and she ultimately picked her own options. And yeah, it's just kind of like taking the extra time to onboarding that player the first time, right? I think that it's always kind of tough to be like, okay, man, like here you have to learn this whole game system or whatever, or figure out how to make a character. And like I don't know, I feel like very few times, at least in my experience, people just make characters by themselves or just onboard themselves, right? It's usually just like, hey man, I'm playing this game. You want to come play? It's like, yeah, okay, cool. It's like, yeah, show up a little early, and then I'll tell you about the game, and we'll make a character. And it's like, okay, cool. And, they show up a little early. You get the shit out, and you put everything together before everyone else shows up, right? And it's like, you just kind of do it with them, IRL or online or whatever.
Yeah. Like even if you are taking the time to like even make a character with them. It's definitely better to make like a low-level character in this kind of situation. I feel like if you're bringing someone into a game at a higher level, you might want to lean into pre-gens more. But if you're on like first level or base or whatever it might be for your game, I think that way you have a little more room to make a character with them, because you obviously you have less options at that level, and then you have time for them to figure out the game before you move on to something more complicated.
Yeah, for sure. And like, to be fair, just to plug this in, for Grand Saga, right? My whole like design thesis is like, I just want people to just show up and make a character and play, right? I want there to be like a breadth of options, but like actual character creation should just be simple, right? It should just be like, you just make a couple decisions, and whatever decision you make is probably going to work out, right? So all of the like, at least if you want to make like a higher level character, it isn't very much different from making like a first level character, right? There really isn't any like preamble stuff. It's just like everything is just kind of like repetition on the same thing. So yeah, definitely. Like how would I put this? Like, it's, as far as complexity, like it's more flat and then wide at like first level with Grand Saga, because you can pick like you have a bunch of options to pick. But you still only get like a limited number of things with those, and then as you level up, you can increase those things, and then your complexity gets a little like higher and maybe a bit more thin, because you're starting to focus more on what you want your character to do within that 1 to 3 classes. Yeah, well, think about it like in terms of like Pathfinder 2e, right? I mean, the breadth of options is crazy, but like even if you're making like a third level character, right? It's like, like trying to tell somebody that like there's different kinds of feats immediately is like, what? What's a feat? I only have 2 of them. It's like, oh, GG, like. Yeah, I mean, like, actually, I guess it could be a bit complicated, but it's just that you have less, you're only choosing like 1 skill feat or 1 general feat or whatever, as opposed to choosing like 5 of each. Yeah, but you can tell somebody to be like, oh, this is for my character, right? And it's like, yeah, but then these feats are like, this is for like you as a person. And then it's like, oh, okay, again, like I like, not to like say anything bad about Pathfinder 2e, it's just like, if like that was one of the struggles I think when we first made characters, or when I was first going through character selection with like my wife or whatever, or even level up, right? It's like trying to explain to her like these are different feats and you have to choose, these are just the pools of options you have to choose from, right? And she's like, oh, okay, like she gets that, but like just like the difference between like, a like a character, like a class feat versus like a skill feat versus like a general feat or whatever, dedication feat, all that kind of different pools of options. It's just like, it's just different. I think also when it comes to making characters with new people, I think having digital tools helps like a lot. Oh yeah, right, because like flipping through a bunch of pages is tough, but like just select the stuff from like a already filtered menu, woo, man. Like, because when it came to Pathfinder, like what I had to do was like just say only use stuff from the core rulebook, basically. Like that was what I kind of tried to focus on. But I think nowadays, like I wouldn't worry about that too much. I would just be like, let's just use Path Builder while I hover over your shoulder. Yeah, basically, and you just hand it to them and just make some selections, or like even give some advice too, right? Again, like you as a GM have been, well, if you're new to the game too, well, you could take a look at what the players' options are. But if you're GMing a table, you're more than likely have been playing this game, because this game, like, there's not a lot of times where somebody is like, oh yeah, I found out that this whole hobby exists, I'm gonna run a game by myself, right? It's usually like you played a game one time and then you're like, oh man, this is super cool, I want to try it out for myself. Yeah. So you have a little bit of background on it, and you can even just look through the lists and just pick a few options that are really good for are easy to understand. Like it's never a bad idea to grab, like in Pathfinder 2e, toughness and die hard. Like everyone is going to make those dying saving throws, and everybody needs HP to be alive, right? So if there's like indecision, you could just flat out be like, listen man, like you're gonna need HP, so this gives you more HP. You're gonna possibly die, so this gives you more chances not to die, right? Everyone can get behind that and being like, yeah, that's a good idea.
Fair. Yeah. I think if you play a while, you'll probably get like an idea of what are the things that everybody might need, or that are probably a very likely pick, or that are just like they're not a particularly flashy option, but they're a useful one.
Yeah, it's like a very utility and less like niche, right?
Yeah, so that sort of guided character creation, I think, is a good way to help get people into the game, because then you give them a bit more freedom than if you just give them a pre-gen character. Even though like the pre-gen character is good for onboarding just to get into the game, but if you're getting into a campaign right away, or whatever the function is for whatever you're doing, giving them the freedom to sort of make their own character, I think could be very helpful.
And like obviously if they, after them playing a little bit, maybe they join for like a couple of sessions, you can ask them, be like, hey, did you think you made the right decisions? Is the character playing the way that you want to? And then they say no, then you like, they have a little experience and background, then you just change the character, right? You just update the choices, because like ultimately like nothing's really set in stone, right? It's just like you guys are just having fun together. So why, even if they made the wrong decision initially, they can just change it, right? You could change classes. You could just retire that character altogether and just be like, oh, I get this now. I want to make my new own character, right?
Yeah. Like if it's just for a one-shot pre-gen, sure, fine. If it's for a longer campaign, you could come in with something, and then, yeah, like you said, like if you go for a while, it's not playing how you want, but you want to keep playing the game, you can change things up. And like, I would think that it's okay to be a bit loose with just letting people completely reconfigure their character at certain points. Like once you're a ways into the game, maybe it might depend on the situation, but especially like at low level or where you've only played a handful of sessions, I think it's perfectly acceptable to just be like, hey, my character isn't working out the way I want it to, or even just as the GM being like, okay, does anybody want to completely remix their character before we keep going from this point?
Yeah. Even extending it out to the other players would also be pretty good too. And maybe you guys can all, maybe like the whole table can just be like, all right, let's just, play, like even like get like some character building stuff, or even just like take like half of the play time to be like, all right, let's just all update our characters together. Let's all just talk about it, because I think it's kind of cool too to bounce ideas off of other people, right? You guys are playing together anyway, right? Like why silo yourself with your ideas? I mean, you might be able to suggest something, right? Other players might be able to suggest to that new player to be like, oh yeah, this works or this doesn't work, or like, oh, you can combo with my ability over here. That'd be a cool thing we can do together, right? I think that, onboarding a new player, maybe it's a good idea to just do it in a group. Group settings are really good for that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, like if you have a session 0, that would be a good way to do it. Like you just get to talk about, well, like you have everybody come in, and some of the more experienced players might be like, well, I want to make this specific kind of character, and I have this specific idea already. And that could get some gears turning for the person who might not have played the game before, so they don't know what options they have. But they might have an idea of like what kind of character they want to make, or even just responding to an idea someone has, saying like, well, if someone's doing this thing, can I do something like this, or can my character be related in this way? And then what options does that give you for how you want to build that character?
Yeah. And a cool idea too, I mean, if you have like a new player and, like obviously they're probably your friends, right? You could even just have that new character pair up with like a more experienced character to be like, oh yeah, this is your buddy now, right? You guys are like brother and sister, or like, best friends or something, right? And you guys just stick together and work, like help each other out, that kind of deal. Like attach it like narratively, so like even positioning them next to that person, right? So like if they have any questions, they could just ask the veteran will just be able to give you the answer, right? Like leaning on to that, that person in the group, that rules lawyer or even the tactician, to be like, oh yeah, no worries, I'll help you out, because that's what they want to do, right? They want to be like, aha, I'm the smartest person in the room, so
In a helpful
fucking let
way.
them, man. Yeah, in a helpful way, right? channel that raw energy into that,
You know what? You bring up a good point, because I think we were talking about like mechanics a lot there, but I think that also would be helpful in terms of like RP and narrative stuff, because you give them someone that they can like bounce off of right away.
Yeah,
That they can like
and
have conversations with right away.
yeah, of course. And even if somebody's like, being in like a role playing situation doesn't come natural to a lot of people, right? So just having somebody that they can just default to on some decisions, or even just like loosely role play with somebody, not even in the presence as like they're embodying the character, but they're like just kind of dictating with the characters and narrating the character what they're doing, right? So it's like, they can just vibe off of someone else, right? And they don't have to take center stage. They can just be like, being like, oh yeah, of course I'm gonna do whatever, like, like Jasper and Crow, right? Like Jasper makes all the decisions, and Crow is like the vibe check, right? Like, Crow doesn't actually say anything. Everyone just looks at Crow, and Crow either nods or doesn't nod.
Although I think Jasper is making some bad decisions, and Jasper should focus on his family instead of this new person who just blew in out of nowhere.
Oh man. But hey man, I don't know. Jasper's so overwhelmed. There's a big storm in his heart. Big old sea storm in his heart. His little boat bobbing and weaving in those big waves, man.
Oh man. I think that's definitely helpful, having a new player partnered with a more experienced one. I don't know. Anything else you think you might want to say on introducing new players into tabletop RPGs?
Oh yeah, I mean, just take some time with them. That's all it really takes. Again, all of this stuff is just kind of doing a little bit of work before the session starts, right? It's kind of one of those homework deals.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Once you see there's a thing that your group needs, if you're capable of doing it, then try to do it. And of course, if you guys have any suggestions, or are fine listeners out there in Radio Land, if you have any ideas on how you would handle this sort of situation, or if you have before and what worked for you, just drop them in the comments below. I like being able to have a space where people can put advice out there for other people to sort of see as well. But I think that might be it for this week's episode. A bit more of a conversational one instead of a specific topic one. I don't know. Anything else, Ramon, that you want to say on either of those topics before we go into the full outro?
No, we can just roll out into the outro.
All right. Well, thanks a ton, everybody out there, for listening. If you want to see more stuff from us, just check out the channel. We've got weekly tabletop RPG podcasts and gaming streams, all sorts of cool stuff going on with the streams, so please come check them out. Additionally, I want to shout out all the people who are linked below, a whole bunch of different Lancer third-party content creators. So if you're into Lancer RPG, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff linked below. You can get all sorts of cool LCP files from all of them, and you can make all sorts of fun stuff in CompCon, which I like to just sometimes hang out and mess around with for fun. Additionally, I want to shout out to the Untold Stories Project channel, where I am on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and also in their podcast on Fridays. So please come check out those various things that I am on, because I really like hanging out with those guys, and every time there's a new thing, I'm like, I want to be a part of it. I have to insert myself in everything. But yeah, a lot of drama, a lot of twists. There was a thing that happened. A player character may have perished. Perhaps. We'll see. Probably. I don't know. It's very stressful right now. And I won't say where, I won't say what show, but definitely come check out all of them. And the podcast, of course, because that has been really fun to record. And I think that's about it for now. I'll have a link to that Pathifnder game we mentioned below as well, if you want to see what's going on with that. Oh, you know what we should shout out is, of course, Grand Saga, the playtest of which is linked below. So definitely please check that out. Build a character, build an NPC, run a session, and either comment below or send a message to let us know how it goes.
Yeah, we definitely look forward to any feedback or your thoughts. I mean, yeah, I think it's a cool game. Hopefully. So, hope you guys enjoy it too.
All right. Well, I think that's about it. Ramon, anything else you want to say before we head off?
No, let's go.
All right. Well, for all of our overthinking and over-talking GMs and players out there, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.